All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education for the Appleton Area School District. My name is Kay Eggert, and first roll call of fellow board members, starting with Ken Cow.
Here.
Nick Ross.
Here.
Jason Kolpak.
Here.
Christine Sauter.
Here.
Edward Ruffalo.
Here.
Board member Bacon is not able to join us this evening. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, again, the reminder that anyone who may be joining us remotely, materials for tonight's meeting can be found on board docs, which can be linked to through the district website. So I'm going to ask first if board members have any requests to remove any of the consent agenda items tonight for separate consideration. Okay, seeing none, then I'll ask for approval of tonight's agenda.
I move approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, any question or discussion? Okay, seeing none, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then next up, this meeting is our, one of the requirements for us is that we have our board organizational tasks. And we have everyone, it was included in board docs as well as at your places. We do have a document that is entitled Appleton Area School District Board of Education Code of Conduct. And these are some guidelines that, annually we recite just as a reminder of, what grounds us in our work and how do we want to proceed as board members. So I'm just going to ask that we would go around the room and take turns reading a section or a statement. So Edward, would you start us off, please?
As a member of the Appleton Area School District Board of Education, I shall uphold the laws and Constitution of the United States and the state of Wisconsin, and shall do my utmost to represent the public interest in education by adhering to the following commitments.
I shall remember that my greatest concern must be the educational welfare of every student attending the public schools.
I shall represent all school district constituents honestly and equally and refuse to surrender my Board of Education responsibilities to special interest or partisan political groups.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a board meeting.
I shall attend all meetings and be prepared at those meetings to act on issues before the board.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
I shall avoid any conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety which could result from my position and shall not use my board membership for personal gain or publicity.
I shall take no private action that might compromise the board or administration and shall respect the confidentiality of privileged information.
I shall be involved in and knowledgeable about not only local educational concerns, but also about state and national issues.
In addition, I shall encourage my Board of Education to pursue the following goals. And I'll do the first one. The development of effective school board policies which provide direction for the operation of the schools and delegate authority to the superintendent for their administration.
The development of procedures for the regular and systematic evaluation of program staff performance and board operations to ensure progress toward educational and fiscal goals.
The development of educational programs which meet the individual needs of every student, regardless of ability, race, sex, creed, or social standing.
The development of systematic communications which ensue that the school board, administration, staff, students, parents, and community are fully informed and that the district understands the community's aspirations for its schools.
The development of sound business practices which ensure that every dollar spent produces maximum benefits.
Okay, thank you for that. Then our next task is the election of officers of the board. We have a board policy and also a procedure which addresses the election of officers. That was also included in board docs. Before we proceed, are there any questions about either the policy or the procedure? Okay, then the then the first position that we would elect would be the president of the board. Are there nominations for president?
I would like to nominate Kay Eggert for president of the school board.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, then if we have just one nomination, then we can do a roll call vote.
Peng Tao,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
and Kay Ager.
Aye. And I'm happy to continue to serve and I will do my best to do it fairly. Then the next position is vice president. Nominations for vice president.
I will nominate Christine Sauter for vice president.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, then roll call. Yep. Oh,
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
and Peng Tao,
Aye.
and Chris.
Aye.
And Chris, are you willing to serve as vice president of the board?
Sir. Happy to continue in that role, so thank you.
Okay, next is treasurer. Nomination for treasurer. I will nominate Edward Ruffalo. Are there any other nominations? Okay, then roll call, please.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Peng Tao,
Aye.
and Edward Ruffalo.
Aye. And I am pleased to continue on as treasurer.
Great. And then clerk. Position of clerk. Any nominations for clerk?
I'll nominate James Bacon.
Are there any other nominations?
Yeah, I would like to nominate Peng Tao.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, then, Kayla, since we have two nominations, we need to do a ballot. Do we have some pieces of paper? Okay, and just before we proceed, I'm gonna just ask, I know James is not here. I had asked him ahead of time if he would be willing to serve if he was elected, and he said yes. And I know, Peng, are you willing to serve if you are elected?
I didn't read the duties, so I don't know.
Primarily, you need to, it's some clerical sorts of things, but Kayla actually does, all of it, but there are some official things that need to be signed, that the clerk needs to sign. But Kayla, make sure that you know what those are, and she has you do them. You don't need to figure them out yourself.
Okay, got it. Thank you for,
So would you be willing to serve in this capacity?
sure.
Okay. Do you want add anything else? I mean, it's primarily being able to sign, official documents and being available for, election things and all. So, but Kayla has it all. She gets it, keeps it all organized. So, okay, so we'll just have a minute while we're getting some ballots prepared. We'll have 6 ballots since James is not here. That's fine. And then, so just write who you would like to serve, and then we'll give them back to Kayla to count. Are we gonna just carry those over to you, or you want to pick them up? Oh, all right. There's not an official hat. No.
Okay, we
Okay.
have 1 vote for James Bacon,
Okay,
1 vote for James. Another vote for James. 1 vote for Ping Tao. Second vote for Ping Tao. And a 3rd vote for Ping Tao, so that is a tie.
so we, according to our procedure, we do it again.
Okay, so we have 1 vote for Ping Tao. 1 vote for Ping Tao. 1 vote for James Bacon. Another vote for James Bacon. 1 vote for Ping Tao. And the last vote is for Ping Tao. That's 4 for Ping Tao and 2 for James.
All right, well, congratulations, Peng, and thank you for serving
Thank
in
you.
advance. Thank you in advance for serving this next year as
Thank you.
clerk.
I'll make sure to read the description thoroughly.
Just answer the phone when Kayla calls you. All right, then we do have 2 other positions that we do like to fill on the board. CISA 6 representative, and then also the WASB delegate. I am not recalling who was the CISA 6 rep. Jason, do you want to describe, did you just describe a little bit?
Yeah, the duties were not very intensive. There was one meeting at the beginning of the year, kind of going over new members and kind of the role of CISA 6. After that, receiving emails and newsletters about the duties and things like that, but not an incredible amount of time involved.
So is there anyone that would like to serve as the CISA 6 representative?
So I wanted to, I know we're going in order, but so I had served as the WASB delegate last year, and you know, if someone else would want to do that this year, I would be willing to be the CISA 6 person. But if no one like has a desire to be the WASB delegate, I would do that again. So, but I also would, I think it was a great experience. And so I would definitely encourage, if there is interest, for someone to try it out.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's do one at a time. CISA 6 representative. I've heard a volunteer. Okay,
So yes, I'll do it.
okay. I don't see anyone arm wrestling you for that. So thank you, Nick, for serving in that role. And then the WASB delegate. I've heard Nick's summary of how it was, and I think a number of us have served on that. It's but is anyone else interested? I also did hear that Nick would be willing to do it again this year. Nick, it looks like you have it.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Can I just say, Nick, if you find that doing both is, you know, problematic, I'd be happy to take on the CISA 6. That is something. I served my first year on the board as CISA 6, and it sounds like the meetings have really scaled back now.
Yeah.
CISA 6. Okay, thank you. So.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Chris. Then the board currently does have a committee for community linkages, and this, according to our coherent governance policies, we are to annually reauthorize the committee. And it's my understanding that the current committee does see the value in the committee and would like it to be reauthorized. So I'm going to ask that we would have it would have to be a motion to reauthorize the board ad hoc committee for community linkages.
I'll make a motion to reauthorize the board ad hoc committee for community linkages.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any question on that? I just want to mention that part of the reauthorization of the committee did not necessarily say we had to say who the members are. So that would be the second step. Currently, Ed, Chris, and Nick are serving on that committee. And, you know, at this time, do current board members want to indicate if they want to continue to serve, or?
I'd be happy to continue to serve.
I would as well.
As would I.
Okay. And that though all board members, we can attend the events, and certainly we can stay informed of what the committee is doing. So, okay, so we have a motion and a second, then we need to vote on the reauthorization of the Community Linkages Committee. Roll call.
Ping Tao,
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
and Edward Ruffalo.
And then about a year ago, we had we had a review of some of our current policies, not the coherent governance policies, but our district policies that relate to school board business. And there was interest, a couple have noted that it seems like perhaps we should just actually have a board committee to take this up deliberately, because we've put it off a little bit, we've talked about it. And so I want to bring forward that we would actually create a board ad hoc committee for policy review at this time to be deliberate about looking at the policies that may need some editing improvements or maybe even deletion. So I would like to make a motion that we create this new ad hoc committee for policy review.
Second.
Okay. Any question or discussion about that?
Am I correct in thinking that we would have support from, in some way, shape or form, from like WASB? And other sources, like it's not just the board members doing this all on their own?
That's correct. There is a very valuable resource that we do subscribe to with the WASB. And so that is a great starting point. And in fact, it was WASB that had done a review of our current policies, not just those applying to the board, but also to the district. And so, go ahead, Greg.
I do just want to add that as we are starting to look at the board work session calendar for next year and working with Board President Eggert on that, there's a lot more time to put towards policy development now that we've got all of our revisions completed for our operational expectations on our coherent governance. So we spent a lot of time over the last year, even year and a half on coherent governance. We'll be able to direct some of that time now towards policies, as we do have several operational policies that we will want to bring to the board as well.
I see this ad hoc committee doing the initial work on it, though, determining, taking the feedback from WASB. Is this a policy that needs revision or, some work? And then having the committee take the first steps in reviewing and then maybe bringing it, and certainly bringing it to the larger group. Anytime we've done policy revisions, we've used a process so everyone weighs in on it and can require several reads on the policy. So anything else? Because we do have a motion and a second, correct? Well, we're going to vote on it first, and then we'll determine who the members are, as we did for the other one. Okay, any other questions just about creating this committee? Okay, then roll call.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
Kay Eggert,
Aye.
Peng Tao.
Aye.
And Jason Kolpak.
Aye.
Okay, then, anyone want to serve on it?
I'd be happy to serve on it.
Great.
Before anyone says I'm doing too much, I would also like to serve on it. And just so you know, I'm making adjustments so that I can. Done 2 out of 4 things already. So I'm feeling good and I would really like to serve.
I would be happy to serve on it. Having been involved with it in the past, I would also be happy to serve on it. So, Jason, are you feeling left out? No, we need only 3. Are you feeling left out? Okay. All right. Wonderful. Then we will. Great, we got through that. We're going to move on. Now, time for a special presentation. Welcome, Lauren Choi, our student school board representative from Appleton North. We're happy to have you here tonight.
Well, congratulations, everybody, on your board positions. In other news, our school overall actually has elections coming up for our student body presidents. They're actually coming up this week, and we're doing a lot of campaigning right now, just helping some of the underclassmen get their foot in through the door to kind of just have them have the opportunity to run. And they're just having posters all over, and it's a really fun time. So I love looking at those. For seniors, we recently made our senior shirts with all of the signatures on the back. And our college commitment day is coming up next week on May 1st, where you wear your future college or profession to school. And in May, there's just a lot of different activities, and I'm really looking forward to them. Club Carnival is also coming up. We have one every year. It comes up in May towards the end of the school year. And this is where clubs have the opportunity to kind of recruit new students and explore new interests or passion projects for next year. And we have a lot of food vendors and different clubs just advocating for what they stand for. And it's a really cool experience. Our fine arts department just had their Northside Choral Fest at Appleton West. It was really beautiful. And the arts department also had the Trout Museum collaboration with student pieces. And it was like kind of an open house for all of our student works. And it was really cool to see. And then if you didn't get a chance to go to the Trout Museum, we also have our annual North Art Show on Wednesday, May 8th in the atrium with all of the works from the students that were in the Trout Museum. Our band and orchestra have their last concert coming up, and both are playing tributes from Mamma Mia, and the songs are going to be Slipping Through My Fingers. And Improvity has their second to last show, and their theme is going to be Minions from Despicable Me. In sports, we've really been taking advantage of the warm weather when we can get it. Mr. Clough has retired from the sport of wrestling. He's been coaching for 23 years, and he is stepping down as head coach, and he has the best regards for the program. It's a really amazing program. We won 2 state championships, and he's just a great coach and a great teacher. Our track meet today was at Kakana, and many school records are being broken left and right, mainly from the Parrish sisters. They're breaking top 10 school records in the 100-meter dash to the mile runs. Maisie Bojarski also broke the 100-meter dash and took first place. And Nora Waddle is recently seated 6th in the state for pole vault. Our girls soccer team, our Lightning girls soccer team avoided actual lightning last week with a score of 2-1 with Nina. And our boys golf and boys tennis have been getting kind of rained out, but they're making the most out of their season. And then softball most recently beat Oshkosh West Wildcats with a score of 27-3. So that was really impressive. And then the last category I kind of have is the clubs. Forensics had State, and Isabel and Ivy Van Asten, Claire Josie, and Olivia Garrett finished 6th in the state for group interpretation. And Jade Wood finished 4th in the state for the category of impromptu. They brought some medals home, and we just put them up in the display case today. And then our Appleton North Key Club is celebrating their annual special prom this weekend, which is really cool to see. It's very fun. And our student council and NHS, which are the 2 biggest clubs at our school, are kind of having a crossover episode. And they're doing a book drive for the local children's hospital that was recently built kind of a mile away from our school. So yeah, it's fun.
That's very cool. Where's the year gone? Are you ready? Are you ready for graduation? Okay. It just seems like it's all of a sudden going to be here. So excellent. Any questions for Lauren? Well, thank you, Lauren. Appreciate hearing the highlights from North High School. So thank you. Then at this time, we are going to move to public input. We do have an individual who has signed up to speak. I know I have to just go through these guidelines, just to be thorough, so we all understand that we're on the same page. So, these are highlights and reminders that, these come from our board policy 187 and its rule. Individuals may speak for up to 3 minutes, and we will have a timer going so that, to keep track of allotted time. We will have to adhere to the time limit. Any comments that exceed the allotted time may be submitted to the board in writing. The board also respectfully requests that speakers refrain from presenting comments that introduce complaints or concerns that are directed toward or identify individual staff members or individual students. As such personnel-related and student-related matters implicate a variety of rights that require careful attention, and the district has established alternative procedures for appropriately addressing such concerns. And then just also as a reminder that a speaker retains all liability for his or her comments and conduct. And the Wisconsin Open Meetings Law allows only brief discussion of topics that are not listed on the agenda. Therefore, we may not be able to fully address comments that are shared tonight. So with that, Rebecca Zorno has signed up to speak. Hi, Rebecca. There should be a microphone at your place. Yes, that'd be great. And I'll turn mine off.
Good evening. Thank you for your work as school board members. You all do a lot for our community. I'm a mother of 2 students at Columbus Elementary. Recently, my family received a letter stating that cross-categorical special education services would no longer be provided at Columbus. My daughter would be required to attend Edison next year. I was disappointed the letter came after charter school and school choice enrollment closed, limiting my family's options. It was a difficult conversation with our children, but we took a tour and got them on board as it seemed our family had no other alternative. We've been unable to confirm that my son will be able to attend Edison as well. The enrollment office has told us we won't know until June. I'm sure if we're able to move both children, we'll have a great experience at Edison. But it's a shame that they're going to walk past the school they grew up in to get there. I spoke before the school board in 2022 when consolidation was considered for Columbus, an idea brought before a focus group of parents from every elementary school except Columbus families. Fortunately, school board members agreed that Columbus was worth protecting. But where am I left as a parent? Withdrawing my children from a school they love. Where does that leave my neighborhood? With a school that can't support neighborhood children equitably and will now have destabilized attendance as 14 other students received the same letter. Where does that leave my family as members of the AASD community? In the letter we received, it stated that this change was in part due to the small size of Columbus. Not too long ago, Columbus's attendance area was shrunk. Now students 4 blocks away from Columbus are sent across busy streets to Edison and Dunlap. The announcement of consolidation 2 years ago broke confidence in local parents and created more turnover in teachers. Since then, AASD leaders and staff have spoken with confidence at several neighborhood meetings that it's only a matter of time before Columbus is closed. The hardest part about this is there is a special education program at Columbus. 2 classrooms were given up last year for a closed program to move in, the newest rooms in the 130-year-old school. Columbus also houses a 3K program and a charter school of similar size, and that shares the Columbus principal is located across the street, sharing our facilities and staff. These are all important programs. But what I see is that Columbus is expected to keep giving, even as decisions are made to destabilize it. The fact is, Columbus is a small school because that benefits district decisions. The district underinvests in special education. This only 2 years after we ran a referendum to provide the high schools with new weight rooms. Just as much as I believe we need to fund special education fully, I'm motivated to see neighborhood schools survive because they build community, what my family at the heart of it is looking for. This letter we received made us feel as if we were no longer welcome in ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mr. Harshis, would we, take these comments and pass them on to the special education department and?
We will indeed. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in there. Certainly, that we'll reflect on. But the special education piece is, something that, is, impacted by the size of Columbus. There's no question about it. But we will, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Is there anyone else present that would like to address the board? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll close public input. And then we are going to move to item 7 on the agenda, and we're going to go to 7B, School and Student Services Update. Dr. Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, you have an item for consideration as part of the superintendent's consent agenda. This item is one that you receive twice a year. So we see this in the fall in order to approve the courses in Start College Now and early college credit for second semester. And then you see this again in the spring for next fall. So that's why you're seeing fall or term 1 for the top. These are 2 different programs that we run throughout the state of Wisconsin. Early college credit is for students to earn post-secondary credit while in high school from a university, whereas the Start College Now program is for all of the participating technical college throughout the state. So it is our recommendation to approve this as part of, again, Superintendent Harchis's consent agenda. And any questions that you may have.
Steve, just a clarification question. All the ones that said denied, you have a comment as to why, presumably that we have a class that we offered. The exception to that was introduction to food production and culinary fundamentals. So what was the rationale for denying those?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ed. So you're correct. The primary reason we would ever not approve a course is if 80% or more of the proposed curriculum does align with what we already offer in the district. So if it's a course that we do offer, then we would need to deny that. Other cases where we may offer the course, but the course might not be running at all of our schools. In that case, then we would approve something that we do offer within the district because it would be an undue hardship for the student to be able to participate. But by and large, it is because of the alignment of curriculum to what we offer.
Do we know why those particular 2 courses were denied?
Those 2 I can certainly follow up. As part of our process, what we do is as we receive all of our applications from our various high schools and programs throughout the district, they are then shared out with each of the different curriculum directors. So for example, in this particular case, Kristen Comerford, who is our career-based learning and career and technical education coordinator, would have been reviewing those particular requests. So I will certainly follow up with her on those particular examples and make sure that's communicated back with everyone. Do that. Chris.
Steve, I'm just wondering, I have that, so thank you for following up on that. But also, I'm wondering how this compares with this time last year and the number of courses that were requested and then granted.
So it does fluctuate from year to year. So I did look back this morning at this year last time, and we had fewer courses overall being requested. We had approximately 52 a year ago at this time, 52 courses that were approved, and an additional approximately 10 to 11 at that time that were denied. So somewhere around 63, 64 total requests last year, with 52 of them being approved. This year, we had significantly more requests. We had 75 total courses that are being proposed tonight for approval. And in terms of courses being denied, again, just giving you a rough figure here, closer to 25. And when you look at the courses that are being denied, with the exception of what I'll look into for Ed, by and large, is because of courses we offer within the district.
Thank you.
But still, not all of these courses necessarily will be taken because some it depends on a student being able to fit it into a schedule. So,
Yeah, that's a really important piece that students do apply typically for multiple courses, and then they look to see which of the courses will be approved. And then from there, look to see how would their AASD student schedule align with the university schedule, and then ultimately make a decision.
thank you. So, anything else? Because this will be part, as it was stated, this is part of the superintendent's consent agenda tonight.
I'm sorry, I actually do have another question about this, sorry. So, I mean, it seems as though, you know, there are a lot of courses that were applied for that exist in AASD. Can you speak to the, like, is that because the AASD courses weren't fitting in their ideal schedule at the moment? I'm sure there's a variety of reasons. And in the situation where they're going for a college course because the AASD one doesn't fit in their schedule, how do we help the student with that?
It's a good question, Nick, because ultimately we want to have two things happen. We want to increase the participation of students receiving post-secondary credits, but we also want it to be purposeful and aligned with their overall career path. So it's really part of a larger conversation that we continue to have with our counselors. We really have three different options for students to receive post-secondary credits. Two of the three are being presented tonight. The third is actually called high school credit review. It's actually the opposite of this, where this is paid for by the district and then reimbursed by the state. High school credit review has not as strict of guidelines for students. So for example, a student may wish to take a course that we do offer within the district, but maybe it's just not working within their schedule. And so they will elect to seek out the application to the university. They will then pay on their end. The family pays for the course. But in this case, we are able to approve things that we do offer within the district, depending upon the request. Some students may seek just general elective credit. Other students may actually seek to replace a course that we do offer within the district. And we do our very best to honor those requests throughout the year and throughout the summer. So a lot of it's really just having continued and ongoing conversations with our school counselors and our curriculum and instruction associate principals to make sure the opportunities are being shared out with students.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. So then next, personnel services update, Julie King.
Yes, good evening. Personnel Services has 3 items for the board's consideration this evening. Those include items 9B, which include 9 new educator hires. There is one that was revised, who did rescind, so that was updated in the packet. So there are 9 total. The previous had 10 new educator hires. In addition, there are 10 resignations. Of those resignations for educators, 1 did not start yet. They were hired for the upcoming school year, but we did include it as it is a matter of board business. And then 1 administrative resignation, as Dr. Steve Harrison has accepted the superintendency in Neenah, and he has served the last 9 years, most recently as the Assistant Superintendent of Assessment, Curriculum, and Instruction. Are there any questions on these 3 items?
Julie, I'm just wondering if you could comment on the hiring and kind of how it compares with last year, as well as the resignations, please, if you have that information.
Sure. So this year comparative to last year, we have slightly less at the same time during the year resignations and retirements as we did last year. So in comparison, those 2 years, let me just find this page here. We're about 6 less positions through attrition. That includes 4 for retirement and 2 different for resignations at this time of the year. So how that kind of equates to our vacancies right now, we have approximately 50 educator vacancies. That does not include Many of the candidates that have been hired are without assignment and are still being placed. So we do have some movement there. All 50 would not be hired positions, as we do have some internal pieces that are moving. That in comparison to last year at the same time, it was about 62. So we're a little less positions. We also do not have the ESSER positions, plus a little less attrition. But I'd say it would be premature to say if that's a trend that's going to continue. Just for the knowledge of the group here, April 15th was the deadline for contracts to be returned. So these next couple meetings up until the end of the school year, we typically do see an uptick in our resignations.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
I don't see anything else. Thank you, Julie. All right, so then next would be the board superintendent the board's consent agenda, which is 3 sets of meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Kayla.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
Kay Eger,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Peng Chao,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
and Jason Kolpak.
Aye.
Okay, the next would be the superintendent's consent agenda. Mr. Hartjes.
The superintendent's consent agenda includes 4 items for your consideration. The first item, 9A, was reported on by Dr. Steve Harrison during the school services update. And the items 9B through D were reported on by Julie King during her personnel services update. And I recommend approval of these 4 items, 9A through D.
I'll move approval of the superintendent's consent agenda, 9A through D.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Kay Eger,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
and Peng Chao.
Aye.
Okay, we are going to move on to reports. First, from Business Services, I'm going to ask Holly Burr will join us to talk about our second debt issue for the referendum.
Thank you, Kay. In November of 2022, the district passed a capital referendum totaling $129.8 million. And in early 2023, we issued the first round of debt for the capital projects, totaling $90 million. Rather than issue the full amount remaining at one time, we are proposing to issue $14.8 million in debt as a second round at this time. And a third and final issue of the remaining $25 million would be anticipated for 2025. We have Mr. Eric Cass from PMA Securities, our financial advisors, with us tonight to explain this proposed debt issue. Eric.
Thank you. Just a real quick point of reference. My name isn't Holly, first of all, as the screen says. She was kind enough to share her link. As Holly said, Eric Cass, Director of Public Finance for PMA Securities. Appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. Is it your normal course of action? Should I share these slides, or does everybody have access to those and can follow along? What works easiest?
Eric, they have them, and Kayla's going to bring them up on the screen as well.
Okay, perfect. Great. So as Holly said, this is the second step in the process for the issuance of debt related to the $129.8 million plan. We're going to talk about the initial plan that we had presented in January of 23 as a point of reference, but I think it's important to understand, in working with Holly and her team, how we kind of manage the issuance of debt and what are some of the key components that go into the ultimate decision for when we would access the market. So as we see there, we always look to minimize interest rate risk. I have a slide here where I'll show you the interest rate volatility over the last year and how we feel the district is best positioned to take advantage of some low rates in comparison to what we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months. The second one is always key too. We want to provide flexibility for the tax levy and mill rate management with an eye on beating the commitment that was laid out to the community pre-referendum. And just to circle back to that, that was 4 cents or $4 for each $100,000 of property on an assessed basis. The third one is extremely important, and we'll talk about this when we get into the recommended plan at this point in time, and that's to meet construction spending timelines. So one of the things that we do behind the scenes frequently with Holly and her team is to help manage the cash flow of the project. We want to make sure that the district has cash available through the issuance of debt to meet their financial obligations from the construction, architect, engineering standpoint, and that you don't find yourself in a negative cash balance situation. And then one that has come to light since the Fed began to raise rates over the last 18 to 24 months, which would be to minimize arbitrage risk or just protect the district that interest earnings, which we want to maximize, are not subject to arbitrage, meaning you don't have to send some interest earnings back to the federal government and how we manage that. So just very quickly on interest rates, I could talk a lot about interest rates, but I'm not going to bore you to death. This is a chart dating back to the issuance of debt when we came to market in January, on January 23rd, 2023. You can see we're looking at the blue line because we did issue 20-year maturities, that in relation to the rest of the chart, it was a good time from an interest rate perspective. What we see is rates significantly rose from the beginning of 23 until actually October 31st. Had nothing to do with Halloween, but there was a significant decline on that chart on the last third that transpired. And that was really related to the Federal Reserve indicating that they were going to begin cutting rates at some point in 2024 based on the fact that they felt inflation was in a decent spot. So that created that significant decline that happened almost instantaneously from October 31st till the end of the calendar year. And it's kind of flattened out since then with a little bit of an uptick more recently as the market is adjusted with some recent Fed commentary. The next slide is the plan that we brought forward in January of 2023. As Holly alluded to, we did issue 90 million. There was some equity that was available through some previous levy management strategies, and we used that to pay off quite a bit of principal, almost 20 million of principal when we locked that in for 20 years. So you can see the interest rate at that point was a little bit over 3%. And at that point in time, we were contemplating the issuance of the remaining 39.8 million here in July and structured over a 5-year period of time. So the idea and concept was at that point in time, when we were structuring the 70 million, to keep in mind the ability to pay off the remaining 40 million when it was issued in a very short period of time, limiting the interest expense exposure for the district and ultimately the community and taxpayers. One key indicator that I want to point you to as we move into the recommendation for issuance in a two-phase approach is that number associated with interest on the 39.8 million. You can see down at the bottom that we were estimating with a 4% interest rate, that would be roughly $4.5 million, kind of right at the bottom inside the box of the 39.8 million. So you can see the principal there. Yep. And then the interest at 4.5 million. As we get into the updated plan, which we've had multiple iterations with Holly and her team, I think we've probably ran 10 to 15 different scenarios. We settled in on some key components that I just want to highlight very quickly. Number one was to continue the mitigation or the reduction of overall interest. So this plan as laid out right now drives down that interest expense on the 39.8 million down to about 4 million, saving a projected $500,000. We won't know the final numbers, of course, until we lock in rates. And so the issuance of the 14.8 million does a couple things. Number one, the district is in a solid cash position that the bills haven't come as quickly as originally thought on the cash flow, but we can take advantage of something called a small issuer exemption. So every municipal entity has the ability to issue below 15 million, and the interest earnings associated with that issuance are not subject to arbitrage. And interest revenue on bond proceeds is becoming more and more important in this day and age as we see unpredictability with things through the construction process, inflation on construction. It just provides a buffer and a cushion for the administration to navigate some of the things that these extended construction projects can yield. So really the idea with the highlight in yellow was to, again, drive down the interest rate, interest expense as much as possible, then also provide an avenue for the district to maximize interest without the need to manage towards arbitrage, meaning there's no risk to repay. You can see that the 25 million at this point is contemplated to be issued, as Holly alluded, in 2025. At this point, it's targeted at March 1st, 2025. But kind of going back to some of my comments, as we manage the outflows of funds as they're available from the issuance of the debt, we'll certainly monitor that and manage to making sure that the district doesn't find themselves in a negative cash position. Then finally, don't need to go through all of these again, but shortening the amortization tied to that minimizing interest rate risk really locks in another portion of the debt, that 14.8 million. The future levy flexibility. So we do have the remaining 25 million to be issued. So there is that backdrop of flexibility to create drops in the future for any levy priorities that the district may contemplate over the next 10 to 11 months. Certainly meeting the construction spending timelines, as I talked about, the district finds themselves in a very positive cash position as it relates to the bond proceeds. And then finally, just to put a bow on the arbitrage interest earning perspective, we've projected out that this issuance, when invested and aligned with the cash flow of the project, is projected to earn $750,000 of return back to the district to kind of fit into that box, like I talked about, anything that pops up in the construction process, or of course, any inflation that would come forward for any of the facets of the construction, which is fairly common as we've come out of the COVID phase. And things are a little bit more unpredictable. So with that, we just have to read all of these words. Just kidding. It's just our disclosure. We're required to provide that. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question. I feel that I was able to follow along and understand, but I'm wondering if you are able to explain debt issuance in a way that like someone who has never heard of this would understand.
Sure. I will do my best. Sometimes when you live it every day, you tend to get too technical, so I'll try to boil it down. So the district would authorize 129.8 million, and in order to receive the funds necessary, the district has engaged PMA as your financial advisor to represent your interests, and also Baird, who's the largest underwriter in the state of Wisconsin. So once we identify a plan of finance, in this case 14.8 million, there's a lot of work that we're doing with Holly and her team and Baird behind the scenes to position the district in the best light possible to get the lowest interest rates. And so what we're targeting right now from a process perspective is that a final recommendation would come forward, correct me if I'm wrong, Holly, on May 13th at your regularly scheduled board meeting. And at that point, you would approve the final interest rates and structure that we're laying out here today. And then funds would be deposited in the district's bank accounts. They can begin investing and or using those funds to pay construction bills when they're coming due.
Thank you. I would say that was well done. Thanks.
Hi, Ed Ruffalo. Just a couple of questions. There's really more to lean on your expertise. So it looks like rather than doing 39,800,000, we're going to split that yet again, one in 2024, one in 2025. And the 500,000 seems to come from the interest money that we would gain. So help me understand though, what are the risks to this strategy? Because I know the interest rate environment right now is very volatile, and we could all retire to a Caribbean island if we could guess where the Fed was going to be, of course.
Right.
Next year rates could be substantially higher than they are right now or substantially lower. That risk is certainly on the table. So what in all of this projection would get us into trouble?
You asked about risk factor, but I think that you highlighted the one risk factor is that there's unpredictability in the interest rate environment. The Fed has indicated that they're going to lower rates this year. They still have not done so. When they made that comment back in October, popular opinion was that they were going to begin cutting rates in March or April at the latest. And now we're at an earliest, probably July or August, before they start reducing rates. So the risk to you is direct around what rates are going to be next March. The only way to circumvent that, of course, is to take advantage of a bird in the hand and what the rates are here today. But to your point, there also is a belief that rates could be lower a year from now. We just don't know. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be on that same island with you, knowing how to invest and issue debt at the right time. So what we try to bring forward is a plan that really tries to hit on those key strategies, but full transparency, the risk is always in splitting an issue like this is always going to be around what interest rates are in this instance next March, which we clearly don't know at this point in time, but feel there should be a little less volatility as we continue to see a little bit smoother yield curve long term.
So thank you so much for that answer, because it leads very much into my next question. So clearly one of the options to managing an uncertain interest rate environment, as you said, bird in the hand, is to just simply lock in the 39,800,000 right now. And then we might say, oh, rates drop, darn, we missed the savings, but if rates go way up, we're going to feel really good about not having to pay that. So what in PMA's professional judgment is letting you weight it towards delay and split as opposed to just locking it in today? I don't disagree with you anyway. I'm just trying to understand the options.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question. I think the biggest difference is that we're talking about amortization of debt over a 5-year period. If we were talking about the issuance like the first one around 20 years, which a lot of school districts will do multiple issues at 20 years, you certainly have a much broader risk factor where you're paying, in theory, a higher interest rate for 20 years. In your case, you're able to fit it in with the plan that we brought forward last January and amortize or pay off the debt in a very short amortization cycle or period of time. So for me, when we looked at kind of the landscape for the school district, that weighed very heavily that even if rates went up 50 basis points, we certainly don't like that. But the impact on a 5-year, in your case, a 3-year window or 4 years at that point, sorry, is a lot less drastic than if you were going to be issuing over 20 years.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Eric, if I can just tag on to that also, can you just also reiterate about the small issue and the arbitrage avoidance?
Yep.
So as that played into this decision as well.
Yeah, that was a key component when, we were talking with Holly about different options, just having the flexibility to gain as much interest on a small issuer, which again is capped at 15 million, was certainly a value add for the district to be able to manage the overall project cost and scope of the project, which sometimes has creep and sometimes has savings. It kind of shakes out at the end, but having that ability and flexibility was certainly a key component that we identified through our discussions.
Okay, hearing no other questions then, just quick timeline check. I will correct Eric.
Sorry.
No problem. It's the next meeting, May 6th. We will bring this back for an actual vote at that time. And if it is approved, we will have the issue then by June 1st.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we are going to go to 10B. And first, report on graduation rates, Mr. Harches. And Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, thank you. So we are going to share some information on graduation rates that we feel is very positive. And so Assistant Superintendent Mike Hernandez is with me. And if you have any questions about special education, Amy Steiner is also here to answer questions. So let's start as Kayla brings up a PowerPoint. Our class of 2023, so last year's senior class, the graduation rate was certified by the DPI in March. Okay, so that's what you see on this first slide here. So this is our graduation rate from last year's senior class. And down in the orange section, you can see our overall rate was 86.7%. And like I said, it was certified by the state in March. And so it takes from that time until March for the state to certify. But what's important, first of all, is that we've gone up for the second straight year. So last year, we certified the class of 2022, which was at 86.5%. And then the class of 2021 was certified at 84.8. So we've gone from 84.8 up to 86.7. So that's a positive trend. Certainly, we have a long way to go before we're going to be satisfied. We also, within our graduating class of 2023, are concerned about some gaps that we see in different student populations. But what we want to share with you is that we can now look at the 5-year rate for the class of 2022. So the 4-year rate was certified a year ago, but now the 5-year rate for the class of 22 got certified. And so what you'll see here is that our overall graduation rate went up from 86.5% to 90.2%. And what's really important is that you see where we're starting to close some gaps. So really important, it's something that we talk about all the time, is that we never give up on kids. We always are looking for different ways that we can support them. If they did not graduate at the end of 4 years, we are not sending them off. We want them to return. Sometimes they'll return the next day. Graduation might be Thursday night, Friday, they might be back in working until they can accumulate the graduation requirements that they need. And so we just continue to work with kids. And that's what Mike and Amy are going to talk about, some of the ways we do that. I'm just going to take you through the data. So if you look at, our Black African-American students, you can see that went up by almost 5% over that 1-year time that students continued to work towards their graduation requirements. But look down at our students, our EL students. So we're talking about students who are learning English as a second language. In 1 year's time, it went from a 66.2 graduation rate up to 82.1. So that's a lot of students that were able to graduate based on support that we provided them after their 4th year of high school. And then students with disabilities also went up by 10% that year. So on the next slide, we now can look at the class of 2021. And so the 4-year rate would have been certified 2 years ago and the 5-year rate a year ago. And now we have the 6-year rate. So again, what you see here is that we're up to 91.4% of the class of 2021 has now received an Appleton Area School District diploma. And you also see where we've closed gaps again. And so you can see that by almost a 20% increase in graduation rates for our African-American or Black students. Another highlight there is our students learning English as a second language went up by 22%, and then our students with disabilities by 24%. And so again, just continuing to work with kids, continuing to try to get kids to come back and, continue to work with us. And so the next slide we wanted to look at is gaps and how those gaps play out. And so we looked at the last 5 years of graduating classes. So class of 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23. And then we took those averages. So if you look at the 4-year rate for our African-American students, it's 64.7. That's the average rate over those 5 years. When you compare that to our Caucasian students, our white students of 89.9, at graduation, we had a 25% gap. And certainly that's something we are working very, very hard to close. That's not acceptable. But then when we go to the 5-year rate, you see that our Black rate went up to 76.9, our white rate to 93.4, and that gap closed to 16.5. And then when we go out 6 years from the class of 5 years, going back to 2019, we've closed that gap down to 12%. So the gap got cut in half. And when we look at gaps, we often worry about, is this group that's achieving well, lowering as our other group maybe is increasing. That's clearly not the case when it comes to graduation. We truly are closing gaps by raising those other student populations. So that's just looking at our African-American compared to our Caucasian students. The next slide here shows similar with our Hispanic students. So again, you look at a 4-year rate over the past 5 years, 76%, compare that to our white students, and that gap was 13.9 on graduation. And so now we go 2 years later for each of these classes, and that gap has reduced down to 8.3%. Similar data as we look at our students learning English as a second language. And so that gap, I'll just go over to the right-hand side, it was 22% after 4 years, reduced to 13.2, after 5 years, reduced to 8.1. So we reduced that gap by 2/3 over the 2 years. And, you know, this makes a lot of sense because when you think about our students who are learning English as a second language, if they're still in an EL program, their senior year of high school, most likely they came to us later in their K-12 educational career. And so another year, another 2 years in our EL program shows good results. And then finally, let's look at students with disabilities. You'll see very similar numbers here. So a gap of 24.9 at the end of 4 years, reduce that to 16 after 5 years, reduce that down to 11.3 after 6 years. So again, we don't ever give up on kids. And this last slide here is what Mike is going to talk about, and Amy as well. It's just all the different ways that we are looking at students who are falling behind while they're in high school, or if they've not graduated at the end of that 4 years, what more we're going to do to support them. So I'll turn it over to Mike and Amy.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to think about a few months ago, we sat here, Dr. Harrison and I first came in, and we began talking about as we were aligning strategies and practices with our alternative ed program in our high schools. And we talked about the different options and how we're attempting to provide some additional supports, but so it'd be some similar experiences as it crossed the rivers. And then Ms. Garvey came in and spoke about our summer school, and then we spoke about the options of option 3. And during that time, we heard from you loud and clear that you appreciated that we're trying to be flexible and offer options. We looked up at some of this rates, and we understand we would love to see 100% graduation rate across the board. I know Mr. Hirsch had mentioned this, but I want to point this out. Closing the gap is great. Keeping the ceiling and raising the ceiling and closing the gap is amazing. The gap, not gap. But as we're sitting looking, the question is how. And through that, I want to point out there are 19 options that you see up on this board right now. 19 options over the years that we have been able to build and become much more fluid, transparent with our community, as well as being responsive. If you remember, one of our pillars is responsive education for our students. I'm going to quickly go through some of these 19 options here. Central High School, Mr. Heidel, I think you all know that. Last year, throughout the year, we had 216 students that walked through those doors. As we sat down this year so far, 170 students. There are students that are graduating as they finish. They're able to still walk if they choose, but often there is an impromptu graduation ceremony that occurs. But students come through, and then they often will come return and speak to sitting juniors and seniors and sometimes sophomores to talk about, hey, this is where we're at. We have the GPS Educational Partnership Workforce Development. Currently, we have 27 students in there, whether first year seniors or second year seniors. Second year seniors, meaning that they've been in for 2 years. I just went and listened to the students speak to us about their experiences, and more than half already had jobs set up, thrivable wages jobs. In 2 weeks, we have their graduation ceremony in which we will have roughly half of those students walking and receiving a diploma. They'll be able to walk through their home school, but they also have a special ceremony in which the community partners that are employing them, as well as their parents, And then we have several staff from AASD there. Wendy Falk will actually be the keynote speaker for that. We have our summer school program. You have heard about summer school program. That is something that we have at East High School. And then we have expanded option 3. We've talked a little bit about option 3, but we're expanding this throughout the 3 high schools now. Still, because it's year 3 of working at it, West High School is our largest, but we are working at doing option 3 during the school year to help cover the gap, but as well as that 5th and 6th year as an option. Our alternative education programs, as we sit down and work through the 6 teachers that we have in our alternative programs, we come together as a PLC and we look at practices, because with mobility, there are times that we see students going from one site to the other. So we do not want to disrupt services, but it's an amazing group of educators. I don't know if you recall, they were here and spoke to you about everything that's going on. If I would say there's a group that does not give up on students, that would be the group. If we look below that, we have higher ground. Currently, we do graduation after the first semester and then the second semester. It is split almost evenly for special education and general ed students. We have 17 students that are graduating from higher ground. We break that almost evenly, approximately evenly from each of the high schools. We have Quest, in which we've expanded during COVID, and we have maintained because we're seeing some amazing success, in which at the most at one time, we will see 6 students that from AASD partner with Fox Valley Tech. The students go out, work throughout. We keep constant communication. Once we have 6 seats available, once a student graduates, we're able to backfill that student. So we pay for 6 seats. It's an amazing opportunity for our students too, and we've gotten great feedback from our families. The next 3 you might have heard and you might not have is we have the GED, the GEDO2, and HSED. GED is the test that you take and it comes through, and if you show proficiency, you're able to get a diploma. The GEDO2 is something a little bit different, in which not all districts offer it, but it is DPI sanctioned, in which you do take an assessment. But as you see on here, there is a test that you take. You must maintain 15 hours of enrollment in schools, and you're able to create a portfolio to help show that you have met some of the standards base. So it's not completely focused on an assessment, because not all students are test takers. And it's able to be modified and adjusted for reading level, in which the GED is set at a 9th grade reading level. Then you have the HSCD diploma. It's an equivalency diploma, but it's specific for students that are taking this at a later date, so beyond the age of 18. It also is one in which we sit down and often used for training for job development as well. We have Appleton eSchool, which isn't always an option, in which we're able to sit and maintain students as they just need 1 more or 2 more classes when they're graduating, and they might not be able to take that during summer school. I'd point out E2020 or Ingenuity. We just renewed our contract with them. We had a 5-year contract. We just negotiated. We were able to bring the cost down, but we were also able to expand many options and had the ability to create some additional or modify some of the options. So if we have some one-offs, we're able to offer that. Both our special education students can take this, but as well as our option 3 students are able to access it. Our alternative ed programs are able to access this. And this opens up the door for students in which they can work in-house as well as at home. We utilize E2020 in our advanced programs, Dan Spalding as well, to maintain and not, as you've all heard me say this before, not have the equivalent of a throwaway child. So we keep that as a lifeline. We have the work experience, and that was something that Dr. Harrison and I spoke to you about, in which we expanded. We followed the DPI recommendations and expanded for possibility of earning 4 credits as a general ed student through work experience. And then we had stated that in the alt programs and special education, we'll take the guidance from those programs. But this gives an option in which as we know that sometimes our students have to grow up a little bit faster than others. And so being able to help support families as well as to, they're developing lifelong skills, college and career ready. We have some additional options with the youth apprenticeships and the CT internships, in which it's building skills, it's building high interest areas. But with the youth apprenticeships, it's helping them line up positions in the future as well. And the CTE internships, like computer science going across, but we have the ability to match up with an ELA and or science credit through the CTE internships. We have the CBI lab, in which it's the PAYS lab. I said that correctly.
You got it.
The PAYS lab, in which we are actually moving them up recently in the last month and a half. We made the decision to purchase the space in which we have our Valley New School. Well, connected to the Valley New School is a beautiful space. We actually were just up there today, in which we're going to be able to move our CBI lab from down in the lower level, thank you. In the lower level, up to the penthouse. They're gonna have some beautiful windows and they'll have access there to a kitchen area, but it is an extremely nice place. These are some of our more vulnerable students in which need a little bit more support, and we're able to work through again with life and work-based skills. You hear that as a repeat on here, as we're looking at that 4th, 5th, and 6th year. There's still an option for college, but we also focus on ensuring that our students are ready for career as well. Some sustainable and or thrivable living wages. And then the last two. The first one, special education options until age of 22 or age of 21 in 364 days. But through the special education option, we'd have 19 additional options here going through, but we just never give up with that. We're able to maintain what is needed. The thing I didn't put up here, but I wanted to pull in is over the last few years, through some leadership from that department as well, we've been able to redesign Pride. Pride, again, is one of our advanced programs for students that might have made a poor choice here or there, but we do not send them away. We continue providing education, but you see that some of the gaps of the 4 and 5 in one of the slides of special ed, you'll notice that graduation rate isn't. We could work through and graduate kids via IEP in year 4, and if we wanted to game the numbers, and I say that in all sincerity. What we want to do, though, is ensure that the students are ready and ready to graduate with the career option, college and or career. So we maintain them to ensure that we have all services ready for them, set up. So when they enter into the workforce, when they enter into, I'll say the word adulthood, that we've provided as many supports for them as well as their family or caretakers that we can. EL programming, that is something that we still want to continue to work. You'll notice that number has gone up. That's through a lot of collaboration within the sites, within our schools, as we're trying to help our families that might be newcomers as they're coming in, to be able to provide them with foundational English, as well as signing up resources throughout our community. The one thing I do want to point out is that we see some of these numbers come up. I just remind you all to think about the intersectionality of these. Overrepresentation across the country for special education is often our students of color. So we see that intersection. We see that the movement from both our Hispanic, Latino, and African-American students, we see that go up. We see that as well with our special education. One doesn't make it better. We're not just being responsive to one group. The intersection is we're seeing it working for all students. The EL programs that we're seeing here, as the students are able to access to year 21, that is a little bit more of a challenge as students want to go out into the workforce. Well, I say that specifically or explicitly because many of these programs are set up for workforce development as well. So we're trying to help some families, in which, again, when we think about a refugee population, our predominantly two largest groups of refugees coming in from Hispanic or Latino descent, as well as from Africa, which fall into that intersection again. This has been some great work with our staff has been going through. I think that we all should be extremely proud. We still have work to do. We still see the gaps. Some are in the lower double digits. where they came from, higher double digits, and we've seen some sneak into that single digits. I don't think anybody else is satisfied with those numbers. We want to continue to do this, but the last several years, the AASD staff has truly attempted to be as flexible and responsive to our students in need. The last thing I want to say, as we see these numbers, the work that's being done, we can see that with our elementary schools as they're focusing on literacy. We see that as we are investing in closing or doing smaller class sizes along within our referendum. We see that with our middle school transition of sixth grade to eighth grade, because it's limiting the transitions, attempting to build community and engagement with sixth through eighth. And then we see that right now with our high schools as we are working through this. The thing that I haven't mentioned though is I wish we didn't have any of these. I wish we could have focused completely on core, but we're building foundations on reading. That's the equity strategy is learning to read. And then we'll continue and hopefully see this phase out. And we're able to keep students and work with them through that 4 or 5 or 6 year journey that they're taking. Would you like to add anything?
That'd be great.
I just had a question. I'm not sure who's the right person to answer, but I think about students with disabilities, particularly those students that may have cognitive disabilities, to a point that they're not able to fulfill the requirements for graduation. And those students, as I know personally, receive a certificate of completion as opposed to a traditional high school diploma. When we look at the statistics for 5 and 6 years, when they hit age 21, they move on to other programs. Are they included in that for success, or is that focused purely on high school diploma? Because there could, in effect, we could be undercounting our results by quite a few percentage points if we're not including the students that get certificates of completion. I just don't know if that's in the number or not.
So in terms of special education, our students that are completing graduation requirements, even students like you mentioned, where they are just going through and getting that high school completion certificate. We have done some work over the last 4 to 5 years where we are aligning pull-out courses for special education with our graduation requirements and tied to those essential elements. So when you think about students who might have more significant or severe cognitive delays, they actually have pull-out courses that are aligned to our standards through the essential elements that allow them to gain those credits that they need towards graduation. So first and foremost, we want to continue with that piece. There's a stronger focus on functional skills within those academic areas, which we feel is very essential for our students. But then beyond that piece, so whether they are staying for year 5, 6, or 7, we have increased our opportunities for our students in the last 2 years significantly for those that are going to enter the workforce or those that would have limited ability to or stamina to engage in a career or work. And we talk about leisure and community integration. And those have been 2 huge focuses for us that have allowed us to partner right now with SOAR. And we've been expanding that next year. So this year, we had a group of 12 students overall. Next year, we're going to expand, do 22 per semester for a total of 44 students that will gain employability skills through working with SOAR, as well as community integration, leisure activities, and functional daily living. Then we've also partnered with Valley Packaging Industries, and they've allowed us to create 2 different internships that focus on work skills. So they do a portion of that. That's a course for our students to take, skills to pay the bills, but then they also support our students with one-on-one job coaching out in the community. Our 2 host sites this year have been Oshkosh Defense and then US Venture. And Project Search, yes, is not mentioned on that slide, but that is a standard. And we have been blessed to be able to cap out with 12 students almost every single year. And we're projecting that for next year as well.
Just a question kind of to build on Ed's. I was wondering as I was looking at this, the students with a disability of now to a 7-year average rate, what that would look like since students with IEPs are able to be serviced through the schools through 21. Do you have any idea on that? It sounds like that's not done through the state, but
Yep, we didn't go out because we only have 7-year dates for 2019 class and 2020. But the class of 2019, students with disabilities was 61.4% for 4 years. And this is not on a slide. So 61.4, after 5 years, 76.9, after 6 years, 79.5, and after 7 years, 81%. The class of 2020 did even better. The 7-year rate is 85.8%. And so when we look at, again, closing those gaps with students with disability, we're at just 86% roughly. And then our overall population is 94% for a 7-year rate. So we do have that for 2019 and 2020.
thank you.
So as you know, I'm looking at the data that you presented here and then also looking at the DPI website. I guess one of the things that's still concerning to me is that, the state 4-year average rate for Black students for 2023 is 7.9 and ours is 61.6. So to me, that's a really significant gap, and I'm sure that is to everyone else. It gets better on those 5th and 6th year. It's only like 3 percentage points away. And I'm trying to figure out where my question is here, because there's so much involved with all of this. But part of it is, so it seems like we do really well when these students are in alternative programming, but not so well when they're in the general education environment. And so I guess a question, it's less of a question and more of a it's great that we can get a lot of these students to graduate, but that's, 1 more, 2 more, 3 more years of working on high school stuff before they can, fully enter the workforce. It's still, not, and all of the other students who are able to graduate in 4 or 5 years are already going beyond all of those things. So, I guess I'm just sharing the concern about what's going on in our general education environment for Black and African American students, for Hispanic students, et cetera. And wondering what is admin's thoughts? I know we hear that there's a lot of work being done, but what kind of work is being done? And I know that's not supposed to be a flippant question, but so what's happening in the general education environment to make it a suitable environment for these students to learn and get what they need to do done?
All right, so that was a lot. And I appreciate you saying it wasn't a flippant question. Sounded a little bit like that, but I think about words matter. So I just want to make sure before I say anything, when you say these students, you're talking these students in general where the gaps are? Were you talking about African-American students? Who are these students so that I know how to answer that?
Students who aren't graduating in 4 years, and based on this data, specifically Black and African American students and Hispanic students.
So when we looked at ESSER, and we were cutting, I think the district took a stance in which we wanted to make sure, one, because we understand where representation matters. We understand that we need to make sure we recruit and retain staff of color for students then to be able to see. We've worked, I know that you just said you're not sure what the work hard means, but we've been working to ensure that we want to have representation within our buildings as well. And so we made sure we fully funded our DEI team to ensure that we have students being able to work with staff that represent who and what they look like and or sound like. With that, then the second part of this is that this particular year, we've been working at tying in, well, the last 2 years, working at tying in culturally responsive teaching opportunities and pedagogy with our staff. That has been something in which we've been working during our professional development days with our principals. We work with our principals. We have identified CLR champs within buildings, and our DEI team has been working and training our champs so that during our professional development days, we're able to lead these opportunities and show best practices within the building. We've identified walkthrough look-fors within our buildings so that when we as assistant subs go into buildings and work with our principals, we do walking tours of classrooms and we look in the building to see. These are all optics. I haven't talked about yet in the instruction yet, but these are all optics so that we're able to see and we do a lot of sit downs with students to see how they're feeling, are they feeling engaged. When we look at the graduation rate is typically 4 to 6 years back, right? Some of the work we're going through, because when the kids come in and if they are not at reading level as a freshman, there is a study from the Chicago Institute. If they receive 2 or more Fs their freshman year, the likelihood of them dropping out doubles. 2 or more Fs, 2 or more suspensions, and less than 92% attendance. That's where the ninth grade on track data comes from. We can work with limiting ODRs. You just don't suspend them. That's not going to change anything, right? Do we game the system and not do attendance correctly? We try to get the students in. We're trying to help them they feel themselves. We're changing what some of the curriculum looks like so that they can see the windows and mirrors conversation. The biggest thing what we're doing, and I say that we're working hard at this, is we are starting at the foundation. You guys know this with early childhood literacy. The Fontes and Pinnell, the route that we went before, it was wrong. I will say that to anybody. I said that when I first came to this district. The foundation was not there. And kids coming in, reading 3, 4, 5, 6 grade levels below, and then expecting to read, to sit and hear in biology at 9th grade level, it's just not happening. So we're changing this. We're still working at trying to modify and scaffold and hold students to high standards. 3, 4 years ago, you guys heard when one of I can't remember one, I think it was the East, no, it was a West student rep came in and said that as seniors, this is the year that COVID started when they were freshmen. So we're working through that as well. Now, we'll not blame anything on COVID that's long gone. We still feel the effects, but that can't be used as a crutch any longer because these gaps are universal across the country. I invite people all the time that reach out to me about this is come and walk with me in the hallways, come and walk with me popping into classrooms. I will take you on a tour anytime that you would like to see the work that our staff is doing. We're trying to provide the professional development for our staff. We're asking constant feedback from our students of how and what they're feeling in the buildings so that we can adjust as needed. And we're working with our community to understand that we want to maintain our ceiling, but we have to do things differently. We have to do professional development differently. We have to approach coming in so it's not just sit and get. We are transitioning for the high schools to work on PSYOP strategies. It's the best practice strategies. It typically is focused at our ELs, but it's research-based to focus or to support our TAG, our GATE students, our AP students, our Hispanic students. It is best practices. We're trying to align to be responsive to our staff, or to our students' needs, and do things differently. So working hard, I think I'll change that. We're working differently. We're trying to do things differently because we want different results.
Thank you. And then what is the trend over time? I know we've talked a little bit about the past few years, but what's the trend over a longer period of time?
So our trend had been going down. And the class of 2021 was the low point. Yeah, I think it was 84.8%. And now we've gone back up 2 years in a row. So that was the lowest point. Challenging year. That was a pandemic year, obviously. But prior to the pandemic, we had seen us go down to 86 and then down to that 84.8. And now we're gone back up 2 years in a row. So hopefully we stay on that trajectory of going up by a percentage or two each year.
May I add one other trend that we just need to be very cognizant about? The other trend is our enrollment. Our demographics that we're talking about is increasing. And so we can't take this lightly. We need to continue to do this work so that we see the same trends. We see the same trajectory for graduation, is because our demographics are changing. And that's why we have to change what we're doing.
And then, I know this would be a small number of students, but like we do expulsions differently here. Or so I'm told. No, I know it's true. So how does that factor into graduation rates? If a student, for example, is expelled and does not successfully complete the alternative programming offered, then that's a non-graduation, I'm guessing.
Yes, sir. The one thing that's unique is on this is that each year we track students that haven't graduated, have been disconnected. And through Child Find, we reach out to them. We try to track them down. We invite them in. Justin and his team, Mr. Heidel and his team. Our high schools will reach out to try to find a way. Part of the reason we have so many options is because as we are looking through it and searching for these students, and some unfortunately we can't find, and they are deemed as then dropouts. Unfortunately, the other part is some might leave our community, and who knows, they might have finished somewhere else or they're doing something we don't know, but that unknown then results into a dropout. But Mr. Heidel and his team has captured students and been able to help them walk through the GED program or the HSED program. And we'll see them. And after they turn 21, we still work with them to help guide them through with Fox Valley Tech. I think that's another feather in the cap of this community, is that Fox Valley definitely works with us to support over 21-year-olds too, who can still refer, and they'll still case manage and help them navigate through that system.
Thanks. And I do have just a couple more. I appreciate your responses, and I know that a lot of good work is happening and that the district does not give up on kids, but we all know like these are concerning numbers that aren't just specific to our district. But yeah, anyway, so one question is like and this comes from ignorance. So like if a student completes their HSED or GED, but not with support of the district, they're still counted as dropout. Is that correct? Or is there a way to track if they complete it somehow without district support?
So when they receive that equivalence diploma through the GED or HSED, I think I have I know I have part of the answer, but I don't know if I have the full answer on this. Is that if they choose to work through it, let's say they move to Milwaukee and go through, the equivalence of diploma is a same diploma. They can identify a school. Now they might choose MLK high school, but they'd have to enroll there. We would know that they enrolled there because it'd have to be a records request to come to us to send. However, I know if you go to CPS, they don't always request, because I worked at CPS, they don't always request records. Sometimes it's at the honor system. So there is an end around on that. With the GED, you can, I started my career and I taught GED classes for adults. That doesn't go towards the high school graduation rate. So that's what I'm saying. The GED, it's a little bit more fluid. HSED, typically, if the equivalence diploma, if it's done before they're 21, will be pointed at whoever holds their records.
Okay, awesome. And then I think the last question I have for now is I'm trying to think of like students who open enroll versus students who've been with us their whole educational career or most of it. Just based on, I don't have the data, but just hearing from community that oftentimes, students from marginalized communities will open enroll to Appleton because it is a more diverse community than wherever it is they are currently living. So yeah, I'm just kind of wondering about that.
That there is one of the biggest, I don't know if it's I think it's a positive, but it can hurt us. If we look at the number of options that we have and then we do some comparisons, not that I'm trying to make this a competition, there's not as many options. And so it is not uncommon that a junior or a senior with 5 credits will come and transfer in here. Part of it is the diversity that we offer, and I'm not just talking about the diversity as in race, but I'm talking about class, I'm talking about orientation, I'm talking that intersection. But that there is an option, and somewhere along the line, the families, I was saying, I might be able to see that end goal. And they will come in with that. We worked through all these different options to see what are those. Sometimes it is, let's look at Fox Valley Tech for the GED. Because it will be extremely difficult. The others are almost impossible. But we are seeing more because, and when we talk with families, not like this, like, why are you coming here? But hey, help us understand what this transition is. It is, a lot of times, as we've heard, that there are additional options here that we might be able to graduate. And it's not just a referral to special education. We've worked through this with 504s as well. And we've worked with our general education students, as I mentioned, several of those programs. It's like a 50-50 split. So that we're able to provide options on both ends. And so we're seeing that trend much more of late.
That'll be it for me. I really appreciate your responses. And just like a final thought is that I do think it would be interesting to know and might be helpful to know more specifically about the open enrollment piece for graduation rates. Because that could give us a better picture of what we are doing right and where our own areas of improvement are. That's it. But again, thank you very much.
Mine is more of a comment than maybe a question, but there may be a question at the end. In conversation with individuals like within the district, or I would say community members within our district, and then those outside of the district, many people are really surprised at the number of options that we have to help students reach graduation and look beyond. And I do think that's a real strength of our district. I had a conversation with a young person last week who is in one of our alternative programs just recently, and spoke so highly of all of the people at her high school. And also just how grateful this person was to be a part of this program. And I think one of the things that I think about in some of the programming too is the impact of mental health and how that affects the number of students who are taking part in some of these alternative programs. And so I just wanted to state that because I know there's good instruction going on, but sometimes there are things beyond being able to take in the good instruction that people need a smaller setting, they need more personalized attention, they need alternative hours, all sorts of things. So I just wanted to say that. And I do really think it's pride in Appleton. The other question that I'm asked sometimes is, maybe for some of these students, we could identify some of those needs earlier, like maybe middle school. And what kind of supports are we doing at middle school? Maybe if there were more supports at middle school, we wouldn't have as many students. And so I have my own ideas about that, but I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that piece.
I think that's been something of a focus that we're seeing, that we do lack the tier 2 or tier 3 interventions in the high schools. And I know that the middle school team led by Ms. Garvey is looking at how to build the tier 2 and tier 3 in middle. That's something that is lacking, that we need to continue to problem solve. I would agree with you, is that I'd love to do some early interventions before, so that we're able to focus on core. But I keep coming back to is there is a through line of reading levels and proficiency. And as we see them get into middle school with several transitions, then you get into high school with 7 or 8 transitions. And the avoidance, we've seen the elopement, and there is definitely a correlation between reading levels and eloping, reading levels and disengagement and absenteeism. We're working through that to try to problem solve that, and see how we might be able to continue. So I wish I had a better answer to that, but that's the challenge right now.
Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
I do want to add quickly to that, although there is no research that I know of, just my own observations. When you have a lot of opportunities for kids at the age of 17, they're more likely to take advantage of them than they would at 14. So maturity plays a role in this. And so for us, there's a lot of good decisions that are made at 17 that aren't made when they're 14. So for us to have all these options, we wish we could have them earlier, but they're at a right time for many kids. Is they aren't ready to make decisions about, oh, wait, my future is dependent on me perhaps having a high school diploma, and now it's really important to them. And so we have all of these options for kids that they really take advantage of a lot of times when they get to be 16, 17, 18 years old, that they wouldn't at 14. And then the other, I just want to clarify something that I didn't mention before and should have. When it shows a 5th-year graduate, it doesn't mean that that student spent the entire year 7.5 hours a day in school. It may just be in October of that next year, they finished one final class through e-school that they needed for graduation. So kind of to your point, Board Member Ross, about what are they giving up when they're coming back for a 5th year? A lot of times it's not, they're still working full time perhaps and taking one class, or sometimes they're at Fox Valley Tech to finish that one class. And that's again where we look at flexibility, whether it's an online option or an alternative program option or Fox Valley Tech. We hope we have all those different possibilities for kids, all those options.
Thank you for that clarification. Because I was gonna ask about how am I supposed to understand the 5th year and 6th year? So thanks for that clarification. I was wondering, like, do we not collect graduation rates on Native and Asian American students, or is this? Yeah, like we as in the district or DPI?
Yes, we do. There isn't a significant gap. We can get you what those rates are. With our indigenous students, because the N is smaller, it wouldn't. I can't think of the word. I'm sorry? No, I'll think of it in a minute. It's not a sizable number in comparison. But within our Asian students, we can definitely get that, but they are very much similar to our white student graduation.
Yeah, I would appreciate being able to look at that. So thank you. And then I wondered, like, for me, it's like, how many students are we actually talking about when we're trying to close the gap? So that was the other question that I had about, like, if we're going from, like, for example, on slide number 4 here, we'll use the first line there for Black students, 63.5% to 76. And then for the 6th year, going to 83.1%, like how many students are we actually talking about in that percentage point? And we can get that number at a different point if we don't have it tonight. And then I think the other comment that I wanted to also share is that it would be really interesting for us to actually have a conversation on, I think, to both to Nick and Chris's point there on the enrollment piece that you were talking about. like what should we also be prepping people in community, meaning parents, to understand about the early childhood education? Because I think that that plays a lot into what happens later on once they go in. And I think it's a very complex conversation to actually have, because there's resources that need to be involved. And I think more awareness for people to really understand, in terms of families, I would say, with regards to what happens between 0 to 5, at that point. So I just leave it there, but I think that that also plays a significant role in the graduation rates and then the interventions that we could actually provide on the district side, because I know that we cannot do all of the interventions that we actually want to, because we actually, one, don't have the resources to do all of that. And I think some partnership with families and communities around that would be very beneficial as well too.
Thank you. I think we're good. Thank you so much for that, for the presentation and the information. So one more report under school and student services, and this would be the 5K to grade 5 ELA curriculum and materials update. Again, Dr. Harrison. Dr.
So the item of information that Dr. Willer and I are sharing with you this evening is really the culmination of about 2 years worth of work, 2 years worth of collaboration with our elementary teachers, with our coaches, with our building level administrators, and certainly part of ongoing conversations that we've had with you. If you think about the extensive conversation that you just had with Mike and Amy, we're really representing the other bookend, right? So we just had a conversation about the secondary side, and unfortunately, many districts, particularly throughout the state of Wisconsin, have to use a lot of reactive measures at the secondary level when students are already behind. And we're really representing this evening, again, after 2 years worth of work, more proactive measures on the elementary side. Our hope is to really reduce, if not eliminate, many of the needs and examples that you heard this evening. So really proud of the work that has taken place in the last 2 years. It represents not only the work that Dr. Willer and her team has done, but also the change in mindsets that we've seen within our staffs, particularly at the elementary level. You know, one quote that's really resonated with me over the last 2 years as we've made and continue to make our shifts in literacy instruction is that our students aren't going to ever work their way out of poverty. They need to read their way out of poverty. And you heard that a lot with what Mike was saying this evening, as far as the reactive things that we need to do at the secondary level. And so with that, and thinking about all this work collectively, you may recall a couple weeks ago, Dr. Willer and I were here before you, giving you the update as far as the consensus that was reached and really painting that big picture, right? That when we think about comprehensive English language art resources, we're really talking about the foundational pieces, thinking about phonics and phonemic awareness and really that skill building that's so important at the earliest grade levels. And then the knowledge building resources, those that are going to put us in a better position to integrate concepts and knowledge of science and social studies into our literacy instruction. So Carrie's going to walk us through essentially the big rock, so to speak, the biggest points of the keywords, key times documents that were shared with you as part of our supporting documentation this evening, knowing that they collectively represent the materials that we're bringing forward to you this evening as recommendations for future approval at your next board meeting for purchase for the 2024-25 school year. We'll also share with you the key themes from the public input, knowing that these materials were also out for 30 days for public review. And then knowing you have access to the item of information, as well as the curriculum documents that will support the different materials being purchased. Happy to answer any questions after that. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Carrie, and she's going to walk us through some of the most significant points for each of these items that we are bringing forward in the future for purchase.
Well, thank you. And tonight is such a celebration because when I think of all the work that we've done to get to this point, to be able to give voice to all the hands and hearts that went into this work and help support this work, it truly is a celebration for us. So the first item that Kayla has pulled up for us for information for you would be our third grade cursive handwriting. Now, you may remember that recently I came before you and asked for the 2022 edition to be approved. What you see in front of you is the 2025 edition. This has been newly revised using some of the current research around the role of handwriting and the support that it brings to foundational skills. This is very much, in essence, the same component. It's the same publisher. It's just been revised. But what's important for you to note is that right now, the state assembly passed as of February 20th, a bill that would require districts to provide formal cursive handwriting instruction to all their students with the requirement that the children write legibly by the end of grade 5. And so currently that bill is in the state Senate. It is anticipated to pass. And I'm pleased to say that that'll be no change for Appleton because we currently teach cursive handwriting. So that would be the first resource for your attention. The next that you see in front of you is commonly referred to as the Blue Book. This is a phonemic awareness book that would be recommended for our kindergarten teachers to use. This is one that did participate in field tests and was strongly recommended by our ELA resource adoption team. This is meant to be used 10 minutes a day in the kindergarten classroom to really lay a very, very strong foundation of phonemic awareness, helping children hear and recognize sounds so that we can build phonics on top of that. And the Haggerty component is aligned with any universal resource that we would select. It's very easy, very teacher-friendly. It's laid out very well. It's designed for 35 weeks for teachers to use whole group or small group. We understand that children that have challenges with reading, oftentimes we see challenges with phonemic awareness. So the two go hand in hand, and it's very important for us to make absolutely certain that our phonemic awareness is solid. So that is why we are bringing this resource forward. Again, you see another phonemic awareness, only this time we are looking at providing this resource to our intermediate teachers at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade level. This is designed to be used either whole group or small group for a total of 12 weeks, about 7 to 10 minutes every day. This is phonemic awareness for intermediate students. It's designed for students who are struggling in their reading abilities. It's designed for students who may not have had a strong, explicit and systematic phonics scope and sequence. And we feel like this resource is necessary to provide additional supports for our intermediate students to be successful in the phonics program that I'll be talking to you about in a minute. This is also a resource that was field tested in our schools and recommended by our ELA resource adoption team. This resource is called UFly for short. It stands for University of Florida Language Institute. This is the resource that we are recommending for our phonics instruction, our universal instruction at the K2 level. What's unique with this resource is that we are going to actually provide it to all of our elementary teachers, K5, EL, and special education. This resource was exceptionally well designed. In one manual, it contains a complete scope and sequence. So if I'm a 5th grade teacher and I'm working with students who are having challenges with our controlled vowels, I can open up to the lessons. The lessons are done, they're designed, it's ready for me to use. It's very user-friendly. This resource also has a very strong handwriting component, and our field test teachers have told us that we do not need to purchase handwriting without tears. So that's why you do not see a recommendation at the K2 level. We are going to implement the verbal pathway for handwriting with UFly. We are going to monitor it. We are working collaboratively with our occupational therapists to see if this provides enough instruction in handwriting at the primary level. If it doesn't, I will be back to see you next year around this time to recommend K2 with the newly revised handwriting without tears. But our field test teachers were very adamant. They told me, nope, we feel confident with this. This program is used by a variety of teachers right now, both gen ed, special ed, and EL with good success. It's very user-friendly. And it will align very nicely with the work that we're going to do. And finally, what is in front of you would be our comprehensive resource. It's called Wit and Wisdom for kindergarten through 5th grade. It comes with geodes. You'll see the word readable. You've heard decodable before. Readable is no different. The difference between the two is that a readable text is a knowledge building text that we put in front of students. They still have the decodable work that the phonics instruction has been teaching them. But these books have a little bit more science and social studies background, and they have some words that are a little bit difficult. So instead of being a decodable, which is 100% readable by children, this is an 80-20. And then the other piece that goes along with this would be HD. That is the word study program that would be used at the 3 through 5 level. What I'd like to highlight here for the Wit and Wisdom program is that in all of the grades, it starts with a launch plus 4 units. And just to give you a quick idea on what those units are, we have things in kindergarten like the 5 senses. We talk about the continents. 1st grade, we talk about powerful forces, which is an alignment to our science program. 2nd grade introduces American West, civil rights, good eating, seasons of change. 3rd grade talks about the sea, outer space, a new home, introducing some immigration, as well as artists, looking at art in terms of the visual and the performing arts. 4th grade starts out with a Great Heart unit, which also links the circulatory system. So we get a nice interdisciplinary weave there. Redcoats are coming. You can guess what unit that might be from. And myth making. And then 5th grade, we talk about cultures and conflict, wordplay, war between us, and then breaking barriers, which is actually a sports unit talking about famous sports individuals who have overcome obstacles. So the program has a variety of multilingual resources. It has assessment packets. It has extension activities for our TAG students. It also comes with a very strong scope and sequence for our teachers that weaves reading, writing, speaking, and listening, as well as language standards. And finally, it breaks down into on an average about 140 to 160 minutes of instruction as it rolls out through the lessons. So I believe those are all the resources.
Thank you first of all, let me just say thank you so much, you and everybody involved, for all of your work. I do truly believe this is going to be a watershed moment for the Appleton schools as we look to the future. As I've been reading about phonics and I understand it's coming, I just have a few questions that are very hard for me to wrap my head around. And I know that you're probably the right person to help me understand this. Somebody once said the only thing that's consistent about the English language is its wonderful inconsistency. I mean, there are so many exceptions to the rule. And I think about the letter pattern OUGF, right? And all the different ways that can be done. So I wrote a silly little sentence, please don't cough on the dough or it will be tough. And you could forgive a 2nd grader for reading that, please don't co on the dough or it'll be toe. I mean, how do we use phonics? And there's hundreds, if not thousands of examples of where the word patterns, double O and on and on and on. It kind of depends on the word because they all come from different roots, right? Could be Norman French, could be Old English, could be Latin, and it's from all over, yet they look the same. How in the world does phonics help our students sort through those when they look like the same darn letter pattern?
That's a great question with a really long answer. So let me see if I can shorten that up a little bit. I think the best way to look at that is that everything starts out small. And when we think of how a child learns how to speak, we think of all of these words and all of the vocabulary that's associated, but somehow that little baby starts to learn to talk. And reading is no different. It starts out with the smallest units. We call those phonemes. We have to start, that's why the phonemic awareness is in front of you. We have to start with really understanding what those 44 sounds are and how we can blend and how we can delete and how we can segment and how we can substitute those sounds. Because when we start doing that, then we start moving into things like digraphs and trigraphs, which I think you're referencing. And then we also start moving into what Blevins tells us is the 86-14 is what he calls it. 86% of our language, believe it or not, is predictable. When we know the phonics rules, we can read 86% of our language. It's the 14% that we call either a variety of heart words, sight words. Sometimes we call them high frequency words. There's a difference between all three, but those words that break that pattern that we just have to know. And so if you were to walk into some classrooms, you'd see little hearts above certain words, some of which that you represented in your little prose there. But it also really focuses on not so much the irregular component, but let's start very much at the beginning, very much at the basics, and then we work through it. And I think the other piece that has been exciting for us is this work has opened a door for classroom teachers with our speech and language teachers to be able to make a bridge that we haven't had before. Because now we're understanding that how we pronounce words impacts how we write them, impacts how we read them, impacts how we put those words together. And so even our teachers will tell you as we've tried the new resources, wow, we found some areas where we are learning and growing in both the phonics rules, but also in the pronunciation. So it's been a fun journey.
So related to that, I'll be quick tonight. Related to that, I also think about small words like set. Set would be a very easy word for a student to learn phonetically. Yet you look at the dictionary, it's almost its own little novel. All the different meanings of set. Fine is much like that. And there's an old T.S. Eliot poem about his cats. And the beginning line is, a cat with 9 lives lives here with me. You probably already know it. And I think, well, how does phonics help a student understand the different forms of lives and lives in that sense? They look the same. You would think they would sound the same, but of course, completely different roots, completely different meanings. So how is our reading going to help, as you get beyond even just the word choices, even small words? Sometimes small words are the hardest ones to try to interpret.
So remember the Scarborough's rope. Remember the simple view of reading. There's 2 components. There's the bottom part of that rope, which is the phonics piece. There's the top part of that rope, which is the comprehensive. That's why we're bringing forward a knowledge building component, because we want to help children be able to recognize the sounds to create the word, but then most importantly, use the word in a sentence to create the meaning. And that's really what you're speaking to. And we see when children have struggles with reading, we have to really dial it down. We have to know, is the struggle a phonetic struggle? Are we having problems with our phonics that maybe we understand the comprehension? Or is it a problem where we've got the phonics, but we don't understand, to your point, the different meanings of that word that is comprehension? Or are we dealing with a child that has both areas? And so that's why one of the pieces with our screener has really helped us kind of break that down. And in the past, with a balanced literacy approach, we looked at level text. Well, by the end of kindergarten, everybody should be at a D, but that never told us, do we have the phonics piece? Do we understand what we're reading? And can we put both together? And so we're really making a step forward in a way that, our teachers, as they fill out progress reports, are even pulling back and saying, wow, now we're really seeing, I understand why when we were reading level Ds, 4 different Ds, they were all different. Now we have a solid baseline of how students are reading. So we've got a lot of work to do, but it comes together.
Carrie brings up a really important point. One of the misunderstandings about the current work throughout the state and throughout the country, it's not just about phonics and phonemic awareness. It is certainly a very important piece, and for many districts, it's been a missing piece. The example you brought forward, Ed, really highlights, like Carrie said, the importance of the whole package, right? That we're recognizing at the earliest grade levels, the foundational skills and how important they are, but then also the examples you're providing of making sure we also incorporate the comprehension, the knowledge building, context, all the pieces that build together. We just recognize as a system, as a district, in those earliest steps, there were areas that we needed to fortify so that we could strengthen the whole picture collectively.
So I'll just share one last story, because I've been in my professional life, been spending a lot of time researching artificial intelligence, and I went to a conference and you could have almost given the lecture on it. But one of the key things of artificial intelligence is teaching a computer basically to read. And back in the 60s, and seventies, they used very much a phonic approach to it. Saw early on some real progress that made them very overconfident. They were predicting that, oh, artificial intelligence is going to be here in just a few years, but they hit a ceiling pretty fast. And they began to realize that the computer isn't so much learning as it's doing mimicry. And they had to take a step back. And now when you look at large language models, it sounds a lot more like what you were telling us about balanced literacy. So it's trying to help them interpret the meanings and comprehensive. So, and I know they're two completely different things to an extent, but it's still learning language and reading. So at what point does it stop becoming mimicry, or how do we prevent it just from being mimicry and really becoming understanding?
I think the other piece I tend to go back to a little bit to your question is that the picture of Scarborough's rope. And if you think of the bottom part of that strand, we know it's the phonics piece, but the imagery of that is that it's finite. Once you know 26 letters and 44 sounds, you can start to blend, segment, and delete. That learning is done. But the top part of that rope, if you really look at it closely, has a different weave to it. It's braided, which means that it's something that we continue all the time. And even as adults, all of us are able to read. We have phonics skills that can support our reading, but where we will grow and continue to grow for a lifetime is our comprehension. And as Steve started talking to us about his favorite quote, mine, which I've used a lot, is reading and writing float in a sea of language. If you don't have language, you cannot read, you cannot write. If you don't read, you cannot write and don't have language. And if you cannot write, you struggle with reading and you struggle with language. It's connected. And so that computer will be able to take Blevins 86% of all of our words. But the goal of reading was never about breaking words apart. It was about stringing meaning together. It's about comprehension and about getting kids to love reading, to be able to express themselves. We recently watched at Lead to Learner a little video clip of a bunch of 4-year-olds saying, you have to give us a big language. Don't talk to us about a yellow banana because we've got big ideas and we need a big language to cover it. And that's what I hear in your conversation. The other piece I think of is that when we look at language, we look at phonemes, graphemes, and morphemes. What you're talking about, the smallest unit of meaning, is called a morpheme. That's where those Latin and Greek and French roots come from, and they help us derive that meaning so that we know when we meet that word like set, we know which set we're talking about in our language.
Thank you so much. It's a very complex but endlessly fascinating topic, and I really deeply appreciate all of your leadership in this.
Thank you for all of the work. I just have one quick question. In the responses from people who looked over the material, there was a comment about some of the themes might be challenging for students, or so I just wanted to confirm that should that occur, there would be other materials that the student could use in order to fulfill their requirements or to learn these skills.
Correct. So the comments that we've received so far, there have been 4 comments. The items are still out for review until May 3rd. So we will come back, and when I see you again, May 6th, we'll come back and give you an update of any additional comments that have been received. But we would anticipate to see the comments like what we've seen. When we look at different books that we present, when we look at different genres that we present, we need to make sure, like Mike had said a little bit earlier, that we have those windows and doors for all of our students to participate in. And having that also means offering some choice to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the resources that are there. And Wit and Wisdom does a really nice job with that. They involve core texts, which we would associate as a mentor text, but they also offer volume of reading, which we would associate as independent reading or classroom libraries that would be provided so students can have experience with the core text, but they also can read books that are of interest to them related to the topic of study within each of the 4 modules. So there's a lot of books that come with that. And for the K2 students, we have those geodes on top of it. So we have a lot of books to choose from.
Thank you. And then just, you mentioned the classroom books. Are there classroom book sets that go with this then? So everyone will have similar resources?
We are planning on ordering K2, an individual set of geodes for all of the K2 classrooms. We will order a 3, 4, and 5 at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade level. We'll order one set so that's accessible for our intermediate students. It's really designed to be a K2 offering, but we know we'll have some students that will need to access those books. And each of our K5 classrooms will have a set of the volume of reading. So if you remember, we start with a launch plus 4 units. That's really 5 units of books. Very much like when our LMS would come into the classroom with books on a cart for the particular unit. That's what this looks like.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, wonderful. May 6th. This would be back May 6th. Go ahead.
Before Dr. Harrison leaves tonight, he will be with us for 2 more months, but do want to congratulate him on his new position with Nina. Nina's gain is certainly our loss, as he's been a great leader for our assessment, curriculum, and instruction department.
Okay, so this, let's see, we are just making sure we're done with all of our business. And now we I'm gonna ask for a motion to go into closed session for Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C.
Before you take a motion, I just wanted to say that I will be abstaining from the closed session due to potential conflict of interest.
I will move to go into closed session.
Roll call on that, please.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Peng Tao,
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
and Nick Ross.
Abstain.
All right, so the board will go into closed session. This will be the end of our business tonight, and the board will not do any additional business. We will actually adjourn from closed session. So to the public, good night and thank you. See you again.